while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Hey there, intro's still playing, so hold on.
Okay, did you get Sasha?
Yeah.
Yes.
Stumbling down the road
Yeah, just hold on,
with
intro's
Bridgette
still
Lyn
playing.
Dolgoff, as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining.
Okay, I think that's the end of
This
my
journey
intro.
has
Hey
not
everybody,
been a
this is Carrying
seated
Stones,
event.
Digging Holes
As
radio
Bridgette
show.
walks,
I'm your
runs,
host,
stumbles,
Bridgette Lyn
carries,
Dolgoff,
digs,
and this
drags,
is the Saturday
laughs,
edition.
fights,
So my
sings,
show airs
prays,
Saturdays
dances,
at 1
kicks,
p.m. Eastern
screams,
Standard Time to 3
and
p.m. Eastern
oftentimes
Standard Time.
falls.
And also on Wednesdays, which is noon. Oh, we're still in the promo. Hold on. All right. I think that's it now. All right. And so then also my show airs on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I am always in Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Hey, and while you're at our website, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, please go and support us. Do give us a, go ahead and give us a donation, a monthly donation. We're making a big transition on the 15th of this month, where the transition should be accomplished and we will be moving forward. And we just have lots of really, amazing stuff and exciting stuff to look forward to in the new year here at Revolution Radio. And hopefully we'll grow and expand and have, a lot more offerings and a lot of new shows and a lot of new voices and talking about amazing, amazing, amazing things. So anyway, today I have on my show, I'm just trying to see, one more announcement. I have a shamanism practice that I'm going to be teaching as a class. The practice is from my teacher, Lakota Sioux medicine woman, who I studied with over 30 years ago. And the practice is called screening. And then I've adopted the practice and developed it over time. And so I do screening and netting. And so anybody that's interested in taking that 4-part course is very much welcome to learn how to do energetic medicine tools. And that class is you can find it on my website, coe-llc.com, and then scroll down to the page. So I turn the class into a page and it's going to say screening and netting course. And you can sign up for that, or you can send me an email about more information. And you can find my show, where the Carrying Stones and Digging Holes on Studio A in the schedule. And if you click on that, there's a back page, and it does have information about me and links, and it does have my contact email. So you can also contact me there. All right. So today I have some guests that are hosts on Revolution Radio, and we're going to have a discussion about their knowledge and information, and we'll just see how the conversation goes today. All right. Janet, are you with me?
Yes, aloha.
Aloha. Sasha, you're there still?
Yo.
Yo. All right. So anyway, I have Sasha and Janet Lessin. Which way is better? Lessin?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Lesson. Like lesson.
Like you need a lesson. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so, so what shows do you have on Revolution Radio now?
We have two. Well, Dr. Lessin and I have two shows. Sacred Matrix on Sundays from 8 to 10 Eastern on Studio B, and Tuesdays Stargate Cosmos on Studio B, 8 to 10 Eastern. And then I do Portal Stargate with Teresa J. Morris, and we've been having a lot of panel discussions there lately. That's 4 to 6 Eastern. And I think that's Studio B as well. Yeah, we're on Studio B.
All right.
We were the first show to move over to Studio B. When they created it, they said, "Hey, will you lead the way?" We said, "Sure." So that was I don't know what year that was. That was a while back. We started in 2012 with Revolution Radio.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the old timers started in 2012.
Yeah, there was something going on then. Not sure what happened. I think we were coming down into 12/21/12, so a lot of shows were starting to address that 12/21/12 Y2K type event. So,
yeah.
I don't know, we found Revolution at that time, and a lot of us all started up at that time. We thought it was a great idea, so we came together.
Awesome. All right, well, what do you guys want to talk about? Do you guys have like a topic of interest that you want to talk to people about on my show?
We have a new book called Annunaki. Where's our book called, honey? I'm waking up.
Evolution of the Gods.
Evolution of the Gods. Yes. I haven't had my first cup of caffeine yet. So, do you want to talk to the listeners about our new book, Sasha?
Yeah. Okay. So as many of you probably have realized by now, if you've been looking at information, we are descended from people, big, tall people from the planet Nibiru, who came here 450,000 years ago and 300,000 years ago, created a slave race from their own genome by adding a few Homo erectus, that's the ancestor of Bigfoot's genes, to make a slave race. And basically that's us. They are the Anunnaki. And we multiplied and they got scared. There's only about 900 of them here. And some of them, of course, bred with us to make super slaves who they trained, and others created a whole, ran off with 200 slave women and settled in Canaan or Palestine. Anyway, so that these people realized that we were breeding so fast, so much faster than them, that there was hundreds of thousands of us and 900 of them, and they decided they had to keep us divided so we would never realize that we were slaves, and basically that's what the religions, nations, and trading companies were all about. When one of their members, a guy that the Bible calls Satan, the son of Lucifer, built his own launch tower, and he wanted to have ally himself with the Earthlings. That's us. They bombed his tower and said, "No, you can't do that, and you better not do that." And at one point, they even bombed his forces in Sodom and Gomorrah and the Sinai Peninsula. But in any case, the radioactive fallout from that blew over the Anunnakis. That's their name, Anunnaki. These guys from the sky blew over their place in Iraq. And so they left the place to Satan, to Marduk, who then kept up the principle of divide and conquer, keeping everybody all pitted up against each other. But it's really him that's behind all the different sides. And the religions, which is what the book is about, the gods, they knew damn well they weren't gods. They prayed to the creator of all. They got the same sense that enlightened people get everywhere, of oneness with the universe. But they took the rituals that they did, feed the lords, fix their food, clean their house, plant their garden, dig their mines, and so forth. And they just made a lot of those things, especially the things about taking care of the lords, into their religious rituals. And those are the ones that are still going on. And the whole idea of the Anunnaki, these guys, is there's the guys on top, and we'll kill to be on top, and we'll kill other people and get it. That's hierarchy, and women are low, and men are high, and whoever's will. That's the kind of thing that they taught us and modeled for us, and keep going right to this very day. However, there were people that rebelled against that sort of stuff, and the most notable, that we really know a lot about, are Buddha, who said, "This is all nonsense. For heaven's sake, you don't need no gods or rituals, just meditate." And Jesus said, "Hey, this is a rip-off system. Don't fall for it." And so that's what our book's about. And Janet, why don't you summarize a bit?
Why don't we let Bridgette ask some questions or interject? Bridgette, do you have any comments or feedback on what Sasha just conveyed?
No, I'm pretty well versed on Annunaki.
Okay, so let's compare notes then. So who did you study with, and what's your source of information?
Stitchin. I read him when I was in the 80s, when I was in high school. I started looking at a lot of his information. And then, I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet, and I have had a lot of ET contact in my own life from different types of extraterrestrials or intelligent beings. I'm really trying to change my vocabulary about, extraterrestrial, and trying to create kind of just a new language for myself, because, we have AI, which is artificial intelligence. Then we have cosmic intelligence. We have biological intelligence. We have, so I'm kind of working more kind of with the intelligence, more so than, I look at a lot of the extraterrestrials, as cosmic intelligence or multifaceted, intelligence, just different kinds of ways of looking at it, because there isn't you could say ETs, but they're all extremely different, and they all function extremely different. Some, are multi-dimensional, and some are more physical, and some are, laboratory type.
Some could be from the inner Earth. Some could be from other dimensions. So I guess it's not really politically correct to lump them all as extraterrestrial. But then again, they're not really showing up and telling us who they are all the time. So we have to fill in the blanks. And that was the problem when I was a kid. I called them all ghosts because I was born in 1954, so back in the 50s, we didn't really have the idea of extraterrestrials. But basically, that broke with Betty and Barney Hill. So I was just calling them all ghosts. What's that? That's a ghost. But that wasn't accurate either. So we are struggling as a community to figure out what would be politically correct when we're referring to these non-human species, entities, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is the word that I can link to all of them is intelligence, because they all, no matter what they are, because of what they can do, whatever different things, it's way more intelligent than we are, to a certain extent.
Right.
So that's why I kind of always link it to intelligence, like cosmic intelligence, multifaceted intelligence, or original intelligence. Artificial intelligence. So I'm trying to work with vocabulary here, and like you said, it's kind of difficult because we end up lumping a lot of it together, and then I think because of the lumping, it's really difficult for people to take the part that they can deal with and understand, and then leave what they can't understand at that point in time. And I think sometimes when I lump a lot of stuff together with my clients and stuff, it kind of overwhelms them. So to be able to put the different types of intelligence in the different kinds of categories, so they can manage what they can deal with at this point in time, and then leave what they can't deal with. That's just kind of my own thoughts. But go ahead.
Okay, well, Yeah, we're just dealing with what's relevant to us. So we both studied with Zechariah Sitchin from about 1998 until his death in 2010. And Sitchin asked us, especially Dr. Lessin, because Sasha has a PhD in anthropology from UCLA, and we're both ufologists. We've been studying the information and, trying to piece this all together from all the different research and all the different books. We have over 1,000 books in our library alone. And yeah, it's a huge field. So we're doing our best to wrap our heads around it. I'm an experiencer contactee. We're both hypnotherapists. Sasha's at a practice. He has a master's in 60 years. He's 79. I can't believe my husband's 79. So he's been practicing, working with clients, psychotherapy and hypnosis and all types of psychotechnologies since the 60s, since most of us have been alive. And we've just been in this field of consciousness and trying to figure it out. And then, of course, I have extensive ET contact, for the lack of any other word, and I go to other, and it sounds very far out there, but I'm learning to own it. If you don't own it, you just get wishy-washy and you keep denying your personal truth. Just it's crazy making. So I just have to own it. I have no idea. I can't prove anything. I don't have I did have a ship hover over my front deck and communicate with me, but I don't have any pictures. I don't have any witnesses. It's just it's almost like they're teasing me. I do have some shared experiences. Sometimes the witnesses come forth. Other times they get the pressure of that's not an ordinary thing, and the wanting and the need to fit in and be accepted and earn a living. A lot of times you start talking about these out-of-the-box experiences and interactions. You lose income, you lose credibility. Unless you're on the circuit, very few people that are writing books or on the circuit are actually making any money. Most people are just, on radio shows, talk shows, and it doesn't really affect their lives in a monetary way to any great benefit. So we're here as researchers doing what we can to get to the bottom of it and working to figure out what will help our world work better for more people. I know that one of your passions, Bridgette, I've heard from the chat, is about homelessness. So I'm really interested in humanitarian methods to make life better for everybody. I think everybody deserves a good life, a happy life. It's built in the Constitution, pursuit of happiness. But how about getting happiness, finding happiness, and keeping happiness? So that's one of my things. It's kind of political, but if we don't do it in the course of our life, when are we going to address these issues? We're here to do something about it. Don't just sit there, do something about it. So that's why I'm on this show. I'm an advocate for peace and transparency and finding planetary solutions. And that involves going back to how did we get in this mess? And what Dr. Lessin was saying, and what I've said on many shows, is that these systems of politics and religions and countries and patriotism, they were introduced by the Annunaki as a control mechanism to divide and conquer humanity. So we won't understand that we are one. We are all one species, one people, one planet, one ecosystem. And we've got to stop demonizing and polarizing and loving each other. And they don't want us to do that. So we're in these endless wars, which feeds their war economy and keeps us, most of us, impoverished, struggling, suffering, and dying of diseases that are incurable in a toxic planet, which has been purposely polluted to keep us dummied down and ill and not able to figure it out. So I'll pass the talking stick to somebody else. Who else wants to talk?
I was just thinking about, one of the things that I've been working on as a traditional osteopath and just all the other, type of work that I do, because I work with people, most of them that have, chronic pain, however that shows up, and autoimmune system stuff and inflammatory work. So also trying to balance out the biology of all the systems, because there's a separation in our biology that operates as two different systems. And so, and it all correlates back to the brain. I've been working with the brain now for over my whole, as long as I've been doing this for 30 years. And so I think, I think it's a lot more difficult for people to operate as a whole person and operate, in like a unified system where we all, pull together. When we're operating, our biology, our biological suits are two parts. Even the brain is two parts. The brain sends signals back and forth. And physically, if you take it out of somebody's skull, it's only attached at the cord on both sides. So there's a brain researcher that I really dig named Jill Taylor Bolt, who got to see how the brain operated from the inside out when she had a massive stroke and bleed out in her brain. And so she talks about that, and she shows the brain and how, the brain could be two separate personalities, two different people. So in a lot of the work that I've studied, we talk about the left hemisphere as reptilian and the right hemisphere as omnipresent. And so you have if they're not operating together, you can't deal with past, present, and future, simultaneously, because the left hemisphere deals with the past and the future. And that's where most people are locked in. They keep creating the future from the past. And then, they're not into the right hemisphere, which is omnipresent, where, the God part of who we are shows itself. Most of us have been any kind of chronic stress, post-traumatic stress disorder kind of starts to lock off the right hemisphere, and it stops, really working and participating. And then what you get to see is the real damage, because then once the right hemisphere starts to shut down and isn't present, then you start to see people have a shorter leg on one side or a longer leg on one side. Their eyes start to drop, their shoulders drop on one side. And so you can start to see the degeneration of one side of the body due to the brain not fully operating as a whole brain and operating as separate brains, and then the stress cutting off the higher part potential of who we are. So I think that it's pretty intense, that you can see, the separation in the biology. Yeah.
It seems like you mentioned post-traumatic stress disorder. It seems like we're creating a PTSD world, that most of us are suffering from some kind of PTSD. We've got a larger portion of our population that's been exposed to the stressors of war. Then we have the environmental stressors. We have people running from fires and floods, and every year we've got more and more people that are struggling from PTSD. Then we have our domestic violence and the drug wars, and people dying of overdoses all the time. I have a second cousin, my cousin's only son. They were very religious, and here's her son dead of heroin. She never had any idea. None of us had any idea. So I'm sure that's typical with most American families. They got somebody that's died of some kind of overdose because of the, been in the hospital. They get addicted to the painkillers. And so this earthly population is extremely stressed, and you're saying that's a major factor for the breakdown of the brain, I guess is what I'm hearing. And the toxins. So there's somebody if you look at it logically, you look outside the box and just look at the system, it's like somebody wants us dead, right? They don't want us to live a long time. Sasha, what's your thoughts on all this?
Okay, what I think is that the challenges that we're facing, like you, Bridgette, the wonderful one, I'm just so turned on by what you're saying, but that the fact that you're putting it together in this holistic way is your response to the terrible challenges that we're facing, and that if you really look at it from which is an existential point of view, the challenges are all part of the perfection of what is.
Are you still there?
Are you done?
I'm
Oh,
there. I've made my
okay. I
statement.
thought maybe there was silence, so I thought maybe he fell off. So okay, we're good. But yeah,
I think that the wonderful responses of you and Janet and other people are just so great that they were aroused by how terrible things are. It's all part of the same thing from my perspective.
yeah, and I think that it's going to take a lot of different kind of, I've worked with lots of different people, more kind of in the medicine arenas, trying to wake up things like the primordial immune system, when that's locked in the right hemisphere. So if we can't even get our biology straight, it's going to be really hard for people to get their consciousness straight. And it's a response to being tired of watching people die and get really crappy care for their biological suit, and people not even really understanding how the whole system works. Their doctors never sit down and explain it to them. And I think people these days have a lot more, I think a lot of their base trauma, it has to do with healthcare. The birthing process causes post-traumatic stress, are living when the fetus is, being hatched. No, just kidding. When it's in there and it's, cooking, and our response to the stressful environment that we're in. And there's been a lot of studies on, rats and other animals on how they can create the environment for rats to be fetuses and develop that enhance the right frontal lobe, which is the intelligence. And then also how they can transform those environments to create weapons, human weapons, because the other side of it is a human weapon. Because they found that, like if you have lots of stress when you're a fetus, coming from the mother's perspective of the environment, that when her stress gets triggered, her primitive responses, the blood will leave the trunk of the body and the brain and only go to the limbs for flight or fight, getting ready to fight. So if you have a fetus that the mother's in constant stress states, being in violent areas, violence all around her, her perceived relationship to that violence and how her body responds, and the fetus responds in kind the same ways. But so when it's born, it'll probably be kind of longer. It'll develop a lot of muscularity in its limbs right away. And because there was less blood flow to the brain and the trunk, the brain doesn't get as developed as it should. And so the stressful environment breeds, human kind of weapons already ready for, the programming. So
yeah, if I may just elaborate
go right ahead.
A bit upon that, in the first perinatal matrix, where the baby is floating in a roomy womb, the trauma which is usually quite a blissful heaven archetype, but if the mother is smoking or stressed or anything that changes the flow of oxygen or the chemical environment, that becomes a polluting of the environment. Or if there's a twin that's kicking them in the head, then as the person gets to the second perinatal phase, where they're about to move down, they have the feeling of imprisonment. This is your trapped feeling matrix, where the mother can't cooperate or do anything to help, and the baby is just getting less and less room, and they're both uncomfortable. And then and so that's prison. So the next one is a real life-death struggle down in delivery itself, where almost 100, I think it is, pounds per square centimeter on the skull of the child is pushing on the, and it's a big deal. But it's also your prototype of working together, unless the mother is drugged. And then if a person gets Demerol just before she gives birth, the baby gets it too. and this person is going to be prone to alcoholism, and is going to be more likely to be a drug addict, and was likely to go for things and then quit just when they're almost succeeding. And delivery is critical. Is a person going into bright lights in a cold room that the physician likes? Is there love in the room? Is the umbilicus cut too soon, so there's an emergency and you got to pound the kid so that it doesn't die of suffocation when you just, etc. So there's all these factors. The perinatal factors establish a matrix which, if reinforced by later events, just add to the splitting at every level. It's a little elaboration I thought I'd like.
No, that's exactly what happens. And there's another development, just so, not to get totally negative on people, but there's another thing that the medicine has been doing to mothers and the fetus in the last 5 years, because over the last 5 years, I've had a huge amount of babies coming into my practice, like, going from very few annually to like, hey, I've got 10 right away. And trying to help their parents, work with what's going on. But they're also giving them PECT, which is Pitocin. And as soon as they come in with the IV, and it's something that actually shouldn't be given to mothers unless like it's life or death emergency. And what it does is it contracts, it forces the uterus into contractions, but the contractions are so brutal that this doctor who left medicine to expose it said, it'd basically be taking like a rock and just hitting the baby in the head for hours and hours and hours until the delivery. And mothers, I know, isn't that horrible? And mothers aren't. And so I had to go down this line of inquiry because all of a sudden I was getting all these babies whose spines look like a 40-year-old person that did hard labor their whole life.
Oh my God.
And so, there's so much stuff going on in medicine. It's just unbelievably shocking. And that's why, I'm harsh about medicine. I tell people, unless you're bleeding to death or you've broken something, like it should only be used for emergencies. It shouldn't be used for preventative because they draw blood from the baby. So here's another thing, because I have worked in hospitals, interned, done internships, but as soon as the baby's born, they take this, it's like a hand nail gun with a blade on it, and you have to put it onto the baby's heel, and then you push the button and it sends a sharp blade into the foot. And if you do it too hard, then it actually can cause like a lifetime trauma on that heel. It's like a bullet going into to draw blood because the babies don't have. Oh my God! I know the babies don't have. And so think about what that does to that lobe of that brain that's picking it up as well. It's a major trauma. But they do it and then they squeeze the foot because now there's a laceration to get the blood out to test. And they do that as soon as the baby's born. God. Then they also now, as soon as the baby's born and before you go to the hospital, they're giving them their first Hep vaccination, sometimes the whooping cough, and there was something else. And so they shouldn't even be considered for vaccination until the minimum of age 2. Internationally, across the board, the consensus is if you're going to vaccinate, it should be no earlier than the age of 2. But so here we are, we're developing these children that are so inflicted with pain from the get-go and parts post-traumatic stress events. I'm getting things, stuck into you, and then you're feeling yucky, and somebody hammering your foot with a blade and then squeezing the crud out of your foot when those bones are soft. Right. And then just the whole terrifying
and don't they give them
experience.
A shot as soon as they're born? Don't they give them a shot as soon as they're born?
Yeah.
Too?
Yeah, they're giving them vaccines now before you can take them, So,
right.
Yeah, the whole thing is just, the whole birthing thing is like unbelievably traumatic. And I'll just throw this story out there real quick. So a long time ago, I had a friend of mine, well, she's probably still around. We just have totally different lives, but for a long time we were really good friends. And she was Filipina, and her father, very well educated, Ivy League schools in America. Her dad was a diplomat from the Philippines, like high level, diplomat. And he got assassinated. And so the family had to actually, come to America to get, asylum, right? And so she grew up here. She met her husband in 1983. I met her not too long after that, and we became friends. Well, her and her husband, because of her experience, and what she knew from the Philippines, and just, the whole thing about the system, even back then, she decided, when they got pregnant, that they were not going to allow, him and her made a decision that their babies, unless it was super required, would never see a doctor, that they would birth them themselves. They would raise them and homeschool them and feed them, perfect as best food they can. So they ended up having 6 kids. And he went to EMT school up, through level 2, and he birthed their children completely 100% at their own home. It was only them around the babies, as they were developing. And then what happened is that they heard about water birthing for the last 3. They put a big tub out on the patio for one of the births, and the snow was coming down because they lived up at Lake Tahoe, and had it all heated, and it was like this outside experience. But their 3 kids, even though the first ones were very consciously brought into this world and tenderly, taken care of, they were really amazing kids. But man, the other 3 that they did all of that and then water birthed them, these kids were like out of this world. And they never had them vaccinated. She fed them a very good vegan and vegetarian diet their whole life. She was very well educated. She homeschooled them. They were just these amazing, brilliant, consciousness and just the things that they thought about, the conversations that, they had. And then she released them, and every time when they turned 18, she said, now, if you want to go to college and you want to get a vaccination, that's your choice now. It's your body, you own it, and you take care of it. I took care of you for, the first 18 years, and now hopefully you can make your own decisions. And so they've all gone out in the world and are, working on very amazing, positive things. And so early on in my life, I learned that, in my mid-20s, when I met her and all, watching her and her husband and their whole process, I learned that, we don't need a hospital to have a baby. We don't need other people to dictate how we choose to raise a consciousness, right? How to develop another consciousness and raise a consciousness. And so I don't have kids of my own, but I think that what's happening to babies and pregnancies and our environment and all that other stuff has to be really reconsidered, and it has to be really reworked, because we are creating beings who are harmed, who will never trust because they were tortured when they were born, when they came into this world. Yeah, go ahead, Sasha.
I really have to add that all,
You're breaking up.
Men should be able to choose whether to be amputated or not be automatically amputated or amputated because their parents want to amputate them. Especially if it's in a ceremony that it teaches you can't trust your elders because they hurt you so bad just when you were feeling warm and loving toward them. And it's a really terrible thing.
Thank you.
You're talking about
go ahead, Janet.
Genital manipulation. And so to add to that, I went to a class with Dr. Mickey Diamond over at the University of Hawaii, and 2 out of 100 births are hermaphrodites of some form, and the parents often make choices at birth if they're going to be male or female. So these babies are getting their choice taken from them, and he was recommending that, like a rite of passage at around 12 or something. These children that are hermaphrodites get to decide if they want to be male or female, but because of the pressure from our society to, is that a little boy or a little girl? You know, they have to make these determinations. So that's really pretty. We're actually a Klein, you know, the sex is developed in the fetus, and you know, some can be female body and they're more male oriented and vice versa. You know, we have that Saturday Night Live thing where they put a pat. You know, is this male or female? But you know, it's more complicated than just male or female.
Well, and the other
one
thing
more
too
thing
is, and people that are born, you know, me and Karen, the health or social worker, we had the talk on my show last Wednesday about this particular experience, but it was told from my friend who had the baby, and what, you know, transpired from the moment she had the baby to, you know, till it's fully raised, and what the medical society told her to do and what happened, and just her, you know, her post-traumatic stress disorder from the whole thing. And she, because of the way that this whole situation was took place in the hospital when the baby was born, she had serious post-traumatic stress disorder and never really quite bonded with her child over it, and you know, was pretty much hysterical. But you know, after she had the baby, you know, she thought her pregnancy and everything was perfectly normal. And then as soon as she had the baby, like, all the medical people were looking at each other and grabbed the baby and ran out of the room. And I think it wasn't like till like the next day that they brought her the baby and told her, you know, after testing the baby to death, right, without her permission,
Right.
to tell her that, you know, it was a hermaphrodite and that it was leaning more towards testosterone, so male, and that these were, that before they handed her the baby, they're already telling her, like, okay, the kind of surgeries this poor baby's going to have, you know, without her ever, you know, really looking at its face. And yeah, this was 20, well, I was 20, I think I was around 25, 26. And she was a friend of mine. And it was just really, it was a really, really horrific scenario. And because of the, they did what the medical people said, so the baby's got, you know, out of the box surgeries right out the gate, and was, you know, moved towards a boy. But because of everything that they did, he ended up having vision problems. He also ended up having, you know, major hearing problems because of the hormones that they were giving him, because they felt he wasn't, you know, he was kind of more feminine when he was crawling and stuff. So the doctor said, oh, well, we'll start giving him injections of testosterone. I mean, basically making him a baby gorilla. You know what I mean? Like, just really,
and they often render these children non-orgasmic. And so we need to look at the importance of orgasm for emotional, physical, and psychological health. So these children become non-orgasmic. They can never, a lot of them can never have an orgasm, and they're robbed of a basic birthright. And because they just mutilate their organs, right? And they're not waiting till they're developed and they can do it consciously, or it's, the whole thing is traumatic for everybody involved. And so that needs to be redone. That's very sad. I wanted to address one thing, and then we'll go back to that, and then over to you, Sash. But I'm writing a book, and I was thinking about trauma, and I did not bond with my parents. Now, both my parents were highly traumatized by World War II, right? And my mother had been home with her mother and her grandmother, and they were starving to death in World War II. They had no men around, and back then in the 30s and 40s, you were oriented around a man, you know, helping you provide. So I think my grandmother learned how to make corsets or something. I'm trying to piece this history together, and it's like, so that whole generation had PTSD, but that affects the baby boomer generation. So we have PTSD parents that are raising the next generation. this is multi-generational dysfunction, and war is not something you can have over there. War affects everybody everywhere, and we need to knock it off. We need to stop having a war-based economy, led by a bunch of greedy people at the top that are accumulating the wealth and are not distributing. The resources belong to the whole world, and they're just hoarding them and accumulating them, and their rich little club at the top, which are probably Annunaki, Illuminati, they get all the money, and most of us don't even get a living wage, a living income. We can't sustain and, put a roof over our head or educate ourselves properly. So it's a vicious, vicious cycle, and we need to look at it on all levels and make some changes, because you can see, like you said, it ends up with drooping eyes and bodies that are crooked and pain and inflammation. And the outcome is we don't live long, we die, we suffer for many, many years before we exit our bodies. Okay, I think Sasha wanted to speak. Go ahead. Somebody else. I'm passing the talking stick.
Hold on. There he is. Okay.
It's a minor point, unless. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
I didn't have anything important to say. Someone.
You're
Okay.
breaking
Anyway,
up horribly.
even if you can't have a sexual orgasm, I could teach you in a few minutes how to have a feeling of energy running up and down your spine, a Kundalini orgasm. Which, in order to do this, you have to get your body in shape, and you'd feel great too. So don't despair. If you can't get one down there, you can still get one in the air.
But it's not even being addressed. Our society is so uptight about sexuality and thinking it's just for making babies occasionally. They're not addressing the value of having an orgasmic life, and so it doesn't even get addressed to teach you how to have a Kundalini orgasm. So these people are missing out on some basic, physical and mental health. But thank you for that. But you're one person. You can't teach the whole world how to have a Kundalini orgasm, I guess. Maybe you could if you did a YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube's great. You can put all kinds of stuff on YouTube.
Yes.
All right.
So what is the importance in your research of orgasm, of having, like you're saying, having an environment, like in the womb, my mother didn't want me. She felt she was sick the whole time. So those things affected me. So I might have been a super genius had I been grown in a more nurturing environment and then raised in a more nurturing environment. So all these things, decrease our intelligence and health. Is that a good logical conclusion?
Now, wait a minute. Your hardships is what made you the wonderful being you are now. You transcended them.
That gives you the catalyst. That gives you the catalyst to motivate your life to be, I'm going to find the solution for this, right? I'm going to work with people. I'm going to have compassion, empathy. Maybe if I had everything perfect, I wouldn't be so empathetic. I understand that. But then there's somewhere in between that if we have a better environment for children to be created, conceived, grown, nurtured, and raised, then we might have even a greater society, one that's more peaceful. You can see how everything's connected and interrelated if you go to this level of analysis, systems analysis. I majored in systems analysis. So I'm looking at the entire system and how everything, and I think, Bridgette, that's what you're doing. You're looking at the entire system and how everything affects everything else. So the end result of this unhealthy environment being conceived and raised in ends up in war. You can just take it and chart it out. Yep, it ends up in violence and war. And so how do we resolve this and make a peaceful planet, which has enough motivation? Can't we just be motivated by a desire to make the world better for each other, to contributionism, Ubuntu?
Well, we have to, I think the biggest thing is that we have to change our focus to what is the better investment. And so, for example, if we have a baby, because it's not really making you money, when it comes out. And so there's not a lot of focus in on the actual investment. However, the child growing up in a good way, becoming a good human, it gives, generations to come the best investment, right? And the best investment for this planet. So, for example, I have friends who, make weapons, and, and they're making new weapons, and they spend all this time like reverse engineering other people's weapons and trying to, create something that's new. And they can spend years and years and years at this before they go into manufacturing, and then they put them onto the market to sell the first ones. But there's always this investment money that's dumped into making these guns and bombs and reverse engineering UFOs and, all of this stuff. There's billions of dollars spent, and there's like no money spent on a mother being in a good place environmentally, eating good food environmentally, doing what she needs to do environmentally to reduce her stress and make her feel like she's okay and she's safe and she's getting all the good qualities to develop, incubate the future technology, which is the child. And so people need to like think about what we're investing into, which is, we can say it's their system. They want us to not really evolve because they need us to kind of, make them money and mine their things, and they mine us. We're their mines and they're mining us. So we need to like change our whole thought process and action and everything else into what is really the investment that is good for the whole of humanity. And that has to be the mother developing the fetus. And then the fetus being brought into a kind, environment where, it gets a lot of support. Like, even, for example, I was watching this video. I do this technique to the brain that is an ancient Korean art that actually can align both lobes. And it creates the unified, field right away within 5 minutes. It does lots of amazing things. It can actually start to arrest disease. And it takes 5 minutes. But I saw this video in India where this mother's born. She comes to this place, and it's like this heated cave, that's steamy, and it's rock floor. It's, kind of ancient looking, older, like people had built it, put it together. And so they, the women go in there, and, they're nude, and they have other women around, midwives and all different ages. And they help the woman to have the baby, and then they lay her out on hot, stone and stuff, and they'll actually work the tissues of her body, to try to start helping her body to her structure to kind of come back, to straight and balanced. And so what they did with the baby, as soon as the baby was born, was the grandmas, they give it to the 90-year-old grandmas that are sitting on the floor in the hot floor with the steam and everything, and they take these babies and they lay them flat in their lap, and then they take these oils, these Ayurvedic oils, and they just massage the turds out of these babies, and they flip them over, and then they really massage the other side, and then they do this thing with the neck, because of all birthing can cause subluxation or compressions or herniated discs, from the moment they're born. And I was like, wow. That's just amazing to me that they already have thought it out, and what causes a balanced, unified being, and how to fix any kind of spinal damage that would block the brain from communicating with the body. And because promos are over. Anyway, I hear some wind still.
Sasha, you need to learn how to mute, because we've been hearing you make coffee. Go ahead. I think back, Bridgette, do you have something to say about donations? Hello?
Oh, sorry about that. I was muted. I was overly muted. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, everybody.
I'm mad since we're back.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So today is the Saturday edition of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. You can find me at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturdays, Studio A. You can also go to the Bee with the Flower. I think I'm changing my picture. It's in flux. But you can go to that time, click on the thumbnail, go to the back page, find out about the show, contact information if you want to get in touch with me. Also, while you're at the website, revolutionradiofreedomslips.com, please go to the support us and find different ways that you're going to be able to support us. And we're pretty excited. We're making a transition, and so I think we'll have a lot more amazing new things coming in 2020 as soon as we reach January. So stay with us. We got a lot of new faces and new topics that are coming online. And yeah, it's super good. It's we're just excited. We're all really excited. We're all working our benzolis off. And like I said, we are listener supported. So please support us while we're making the turn, the curve in the road. All right. So I have, we're on the second hour, and I have Sasha and Janet Lessin on, and we're discussing a lot of different topics. And I wanted to throw something out there to see what you guys think about this. So about 5 years ago, so I work with the field, and some shaman, people call it the luminous sphere, lots of different kinds of things, from moving, the assemblage point, right? Moving the point of consciousness, kind of a thing. So I was in the field working with it, and about 5 years ago, I discovered something about how you have your field, you have your big energy field that is around you, and that's the large power center. So that's the large generation, generated powers in that field. And then I noticed that coming into the chakra centers, these other types of fields. And then I discovered that each chakra is its own conduit or power generator, and that the power comes out of the field into the separate areas, and the chakra is actually a power generator for that area. And my study on the biological structure of the body, we have these diaphragms. I'm sure you guys understand that. At every, main chakra that we have in our body, there's a diaphragm, and it expands and contracts. I mean, obviously, if the spine gets damaged in any way, you're not going to have those diaphragms working. The ones in the head are the most important ones. Those are the most vital diaphragms, and diaphragms are connected to a chakra. But it was interesting to me how the chakra on the energy field level is more like a transmitter, receives and sends out into like the body. It's kind of like the conduit in between, and you can actually generate power back into the chakra by the diaphragm opening and contracting. And so I started to realize, it's pumping, it's multi-dimensional pumping. It's physically pumping, because that's what the diaphragm does in the body. It opens and contracts. This is how all the fluids and everything stay functional. But it was interesting to me that you could take power out of your energy field through that particular chakra center into the body, but then you could also, it holds energy from that particular diaphragm in that particular chakra that actually can also be put back into your field to help with, longevity and health. But I thought it was really interesting that even the chakra points on the energetic part are also actually dealing with pulsating, pumping, of energy back and forth from the cosmic self to the physical self and back again. Do you guys have any thoughts about chakras?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Go first.
Okay. So
You're breaking up.
In our training, we look at the energy. Okay, you take it, Jim.
Honey, you have to come in here then if we're going to have this. You're breaking up horribly, so we'll go on speaker. Hold on 1 second while we shift.
Transition. I'll wait.
Transition. Okay, hold on. We're going to transition.
All right.
Okay, 1 second. I've got to switch to the speaker. Speaker. Okay, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and explain the chakra system, honey. This is our mic right there.
Okay, so
You're aware.
scooch over a little.
Here, just go here. Take it right there.
Okay.
Scooch over. Scooch over, Janet.
Okay, so in the system of centering that I use, each chakra has within it a dichotomy between that needs to be balanced. So you're the first chakra, you have your protective energy and your inner child, your vulnerability, and being centered at the first chakra within you allows you to decide how vulnerable or how protective you're going to be. And the second chakra, the sexual chakra, it's you, how are you going to be, how sensual or how sexual are you going to be, and so forth. The power chakra, how much are you going to lead, how much you're going to follow, how much you're going to give in the love chakra, the heart chakra receive, throat chakra, how much you're going to communicate, how much you're going to keep private, how are you going to sing, your vision center, how much you're going to intellectualize, how intuitive are you, how much you're going to get the whole thing from your ancestors, and so forth. So that each level there's a dichotomy that you need within you. You can balance. But when you start to merge fields with other people, then you have the possibility of balancing all those things out between the two of you and making a coherent field in each of those. And that's what a relationship does. It gives you the opportunity to see which parts of you are annoying in the other person or you overly admire in the other person, because those just are resonating what you need, and so forth. And it goes. And once you start to master your energy field, you can expand or contract your own and feel anyone else's. I can feel anyone else's energy unless they're really shielding it. I can feel when they're shielding it too, because you can. Each field has its own feeling, and you can, if you're intelligent and know how to, you can turn down your own energy field if you don't want to be there. You can increase the personal part of it. You can increase the intellectual part. You can balance things out once you understand that you are an energy system and that you have some control of it. And the same thing with the others that we seem so dichotomous with. If we can look at what it is that with these theys that are oppressing us and say, what is it inside of us that are oppressing that we're oppressing ourselves with? Maybe we can, when some even supposed superior power is in a relationship with supposed inferior powers like we earthlings, it's really a relationship. It goes two ways. We might be slaves, but perhaps they're dependent on us, because if we didn't have slaves, they'd have to do something themselves. So we're not powerless. We're in relationship. And you can feel the energy, and you can stand up and be yourself and claim your birthright as a person who can function in all levels of consciousness and are not confined just to the material.
Great, Janet.
Yeah, so we've been using the chakra system teaching. We met in 1997. So based on each chakra level, you can work with the client and help them process and cathartic and reprogram and release and get conscious. And then we work with them on their bonding pattern. So I agree with what you're saying. And so, yeah, we've been doing a similar thing our entire time together. So I guess that's what I want to say. Back to you about this. So you're talking about the chakras. What else would you like to say about that, I guess?
Well, that all the systems for me, the way that I look at it in medicine is that the sphere has to be good, the chakras have to be good, and that the spinal channel in the physical body has to be good in order for it to all work, like in a unified way, which makes us, to me, a unified being when all of our systems are operating, together.
Right. So we look at the chakra blocks, and if somebody is having a block on a certain chakra, like an emotional issue, and their heart's broken, or they have base chakra root problems, and this is blocking your kundalini from awakening. When your kundalini awakens, it travels up through all your and out your crown chakra, and it reconnects you with source and the awareness of who you are as a eternal being, and you become conscious and enlightened. And it's not just a one-time thing. People have many time. Their kundalini has an initial awakening, but they can have many kundalini awakenings, and we're not exactly sure exactly what causes the kundalini to awaken. There are people that have been priests and nuns, and they're not trained in this tradition, and they have kundalini awakenings. But once that happens, you really start becoming conscious and aware of who you are as an eternal being. You can start your evolution progressing much faster than when you're unconscious. Do you have something to add to that, Sash?
No, I like what you said. Indeed, it's but you could go beyond that. What my colleague Chris Hardy has started doing this study of. She found there was a feeling of a spiritual energy, a coherent field around certain groups of meditators, around certain churches, and she could walk a certain distance and see how much that extends. And that's what happens when people get together. Emil Durkheim, a long time ago, said, what happens when people get together for a ceremony in a church or out in the woods? What they're doing is they're feeling their collective oneness, their collective consciousness, their coherent field. That's what allows you to transcend your separate self sense and feel oneness with every other level of consciousness, in my way of looking at things.
Yeah, all good stuff. So what do you think, just I'll throw out to you guys, what do you think, what do you think are some of the most challenging things that people face to heal, or a commonality collectively that you see in individuals that, have to heal?
I think that collectively the illusion of which has become the illusion of opposition, when it's really just the intelligent observation of distinctiveness and intelligent discrimination gets all mixed up with you ain't like me, so I'm again you, and that's stupid. We all lose with that. We need synergy.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead,
I
Janet.
agree with that. The illusion of separate. See, that goes back to the Annunaki. They realized that we were in many ways more advanced than they were, because we had the ability to connect with source in ways that they could not. They were, perhaps not as connected with their empathy and compassion. So the agenda that was set forth by the Annunaki. I did want to go back and address money, and you were talking about your war-based, your friends that were making guns. So I made a note for that. I'll come back to that. But the divide and conquer, keep this set. United we stand, divided we fall. So we have fallen into deep, dark despair, especially in these times right now, and we need to take back who we are as eternal beings, and we are perhaps more advanced than many of the other races. I think that's part of the problem. We're not given all the information. We're being denied who we are. We're put into these boxes, and we're doing it. We're following through, and we're believing everything that's told us, and we're limiting ourselves. But if you really take the time and do something like a tantric puja, where you go in a circle and you look at each other in each other's eyes, and you can just do it for a minute or a couple seconds, and you look in each other's eyes, and you look through, and you see God, you see Source all the way in the right eye. And if you do a circle where you're connecting with, dozens of people, by the time you get around the circle, this can be nonverbal. You're crying and you're remembering, oh, that's who I am, because each person that you encounter reflects the divine back to ourselves. And so becoming conscious, remembering who we are, and doing your family of origin work and your cultural conditioning and your religious program and your social programming is probably the most important thing you can do while you're walking this earth. And then once you remember, you reach one, teach one, you help others to remember. And a lot of times all you have to do is witness, be there for someone, hold their hand while they emote, while they cry, while they remember, while they process. And don't make them wrong or bad for their story, for what they're expressing, but just allow. Sasha wants to say something.
Yeah, listener, I'd like to propose a little experiment that'll just blow your mind and make you really happy. Get with someone that you care about, and look in their eyes, especially in their left eye. And first of all, you both breathe in and out at the same time while you look in that eye, and then one of you breathes out, and the other breathes in. And so you're passing the breath back and forth. And when you're looking in the left eye, I want you to imagine you can look past, and you do this with somebody you care about. You look past their eye deep into their soul. Just imagine you can look deep inside of them and breathe with them. And after a while, you'll get the feeling that person inside there is just like you. And then you say, the divine in me sees the divine in you. Or you want to say it in Sanskrit, you say, namaste. So you're going to breathe together, look in the person's eyes till you feel oneness with them deep inside, and then say, the divine in me salutes the divine in thee.
Okay. So back
Yeah,
to
I do.
Bridgette.
Yeah, no, I do that. I do it a little bit differently, but I do the left eye contact with animals that I work on. And so when I go somewhere to evaluate like a horse or dog or sometimes multi-animals, it's one of the things that I do is I'll breathe, I'll blow air from my mouth into their nose. And then I'll also look into their left eye and just make that connection until they're calmed down, so that I can, assess them and work on them, and that they build trust. But connecting them because sometimes, animals, when I go out to see them, they've suffered a lot of trauma for whatever reason, maybe an injury, long-term injury, emotional stuff. And so that kind of really calms them down. It's like connecting myself to their higher consciousness and they're connecting to mine, and then us being able to communicate that way while I work on them. Something that
wow, that's beautiful. Oh, I never thought of doing that with the animals. That's wonderful.
Yeah, no. So, and I do it with my dog. We have, days where we both have had a lot of stress, and I'll just stare into her left eye and we'll just start breathing until we're both like sighing out, deep, stressful energies. And then, yeah, so that's how we kind of also communicate as well. She's pretty conscious, I'll tell you. For sure.
And so this is the two being bonding pattern. This is a synergistic energy, and that's what we're capable with of anyone that we think is other. We're really part of same.
Well, I think anything, like, for example, I study a lot of Rudolf Steiner. Yeah. I'm certified biodynamic, and 12 years ago, and went through the college at Steiner College, and I'm going back right now, and I'm studying into certifications right now online, and going back and restudying, the 8 agricultural lectures of Rudolf Steiner and his spiritual science stuff. And one of the things he does is he presents the same type of thing for plants. Like in his book, I think it's called Reaching Higher Knowledge or Knowing Higher Worlds. He talks about doing meditations where you imagine the seed going into the ground and you watch the plant develop, and then you break it all back down to the soil. And so having that relationship to plants. And one of the things that I learned in biodynamic study for phenomenology was that, leaves have the similar photosynthesis, which is seeing, like if the light is out, they can see. If there's no light with plant leaves, then they can't see. So their seeing is based on photosynthesis or light. And it's equivalent, leaves are equivalent when you break down the molecular structure, the lasagna of how they work are almost identical to a rabbit retina. So when the light is out, all those leaves on the tree can see you in some manner. So also being able to approach them with that awareness, that coming in with the, contacting them, breathing on them. I mean, there is scientific data that supports the fact that if we're trying to grow our own food as medicine to cure like a cancer or something like that, that by going outside and watering the plant and touching it and blowing on it, it can pick up the data that we need to actually grow the fruit that we specifically need to cure the disease we have. So, yeah, there's also, so you can elevate the consciousness of plants of how you interact with them as well. Anyway, just some thoughts. So you have any thoughts on all that?
When are you teaching a class in Maui? I want to study with you.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm just still, I'm just still working on a lot of the things that I'm working on and trying to, find how to create a vocabulary around it. I think that you probably understand that a lot, Sasha, is like taking things around a curve into a different way of thinking about them or seeing them. You have to start creating a vocabulary and a language that supports it to be able to educate people, because if you don't have a language to support it, and that's what I think mostly what a lot of us are doing, Pathfinders, is that we're actually working on creating new vocabulary that has new ways of defining things, and then we can educate the population.
Yeah. I think the big thing that's really coming up in order to free the metaphysical traps of the way we talk is to talk about awareness. And it's just a simple English word, like instead of consciousness, or get it free of everything metaphysical in some very simple way, like awareness.
Yeah, attention. I like to call it attention. Being able to use your attention, nice, yeah, no matter what's going on, kind of in a neutral, balanced way, so that you're not impacted as much and you don't shut down. So I like kind of the word attention and holding your attention.
And that's perfect.
Being at attention, kind of a thing. And it takes work. It's not an easy thing to do. If you have a lot of traumas.
So we would call it intentionality in phenomenology. It's called intention. That is really what it's called, and that's the basic principle about a mind and a matter being interconnected. Whatever is polarly opposed is intend and imply each other.
Yeah, I used to use in phenomenology. Yes, that exactly how things go down in the spiritual science of it. And I think probably I end up using the word attention more just because so people can know my vocabulary, because I practice a lot of shamanism. And so that's kind of the word that we use. To be sober and be awake at all times is holding your attention.
Oh, that's nice. Awake is very nice.
Yeah. So anyway.
The less syllables, the better.
Yeah.
Just exactly. The less syllables and the more rhyme, the better.
Yeah. All right, Janet, your turn.
Well, I was stuck back on your friends that were devoted to making guns and reverse engineering weapons, and they devoted their whole life. And I had this image of them going to the pearly gates, and God said, "What did you do?" with your time on the earth, and it's like I devoted my time to, developing things to kill each other, and I just was like, oh my God, I feel bad for people that are so unconscious that spend their lives.
Well, mostly they're
figuring out
devoted
ways
to making money.
Well, see, that's what I want to go back and cover, the money thing. So this goes back full circle to the Annunaki. So we had Nanar, and he's oh goodness, cat's running over my. And so Nanar, who was the son of Enlil, and Enlil was Yahweh, and Yahweh didn't like the Earthlings, and he wanted them all wiped out with the flood. And so his family, his whole tribe, they weren't really in alignment with humanity, and the Enkiites and his clan, they saved us from the flood, and they had created humanity. So, that was the original polarity. So in order to control the masses that were developing, he developed money. Now, what I learned from working with extraterrestrials is that most conscious, advanced level 1 and above civilizations no longer use money. It's a very primitive, slave-based system that keeps us locked in slavery, especially when you add interest. It's a no-win. You can't ever win, and and it creates greed, and it just all pans out to war. So here we have this. We're in a current war-based system. So some of the things that are being proposed are, basic minimum needs economy and Ubuntu contributionism, going back into more tribal, what's that, consensus based. Yeah, we're disconnected with one another. If we could, it's empathy and compassion. So if you feel somebody, you love somebody, you're not going to want to bomb them out of existence and starve them and leave them homeless. You're going to want to help them get their needs met. And then everybody, the win for all is everybody gets their needs met. Everybody, and then in the more advanced societies, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's not just technology, it's how do you treat each other. So in more advanced technologies, we're going beyond just needs. It's like, well, I'd like everybody to have their own mansion. I think that's what they were saying that ended up in the Bible. The saying about in my world there are many mansions. God says there's many mansions where he is, and in heaven you will have your own mansion. So perhaps that's what meant by that, is that once we go past this realm and this, it's a competitive. Honey, sit down, please. You're making me distracted. It's a competitive realm where we don't get our needs. I forget what I was saying. What was I saying, Sasha?
You're saying that you forget what you were saying.
Lack consciousness society, that we don't think there's enough to go around, but there actually is more than enough. And so we need to rethink this. That's what I do. I go to these classes at night as a contact the experiencer, and they show me other societies that are not human based, and we just really need to catch up and do better, because this is not how you treat your brothers and sisters. This is not how you treat other conscious beings. And we're not just talking about the humans, but how we treat our animals, how we treat the soil, the earth, the water, the plants. Everything has consciousness in it, and this society is very unconscious. So I'm here doing what I can to wake up our society, and part of it is giving ideas and concepts something for you to wrap your mind around, because this whole program keeps us in this limited competition. And this all started from the Annunaki, especially Nanar, who Allah, he's Allah, and he wanted to keep us in competition, locked in war, in struggle, in separation, and he's done a good job. But we can say, enough, stop. We're not going to play your game. We're human beings. We're better than the Anunnaki. We're better than a lot of the war-based extraterrestrial species. We're connected to source and unity consciousness and loving oneness, and we can do better. There's my preaching on this, on the pedestal. I'm stepping down and passing it to Sasha. Take it away.
Well, it's not just that anyone is better than anyone else. That's the whole point. You know, it's like every life is meant for a living. Every song is to be sung. Every dream is worth. You know, it's like that. It's the same for everyone. We've all got a light to shine, and we don't have to be inferior or superior to anybody. We're just contributing. That's what I think.
Okay, back to Bridgette.
Yeah, back to investing. What are we investing in? What's the best investment for the future? So I have a lot of my teachers have been Native, and it wasn't until like the last, 3 years that I realized this concept completely. But they're always talking about, when we are doing things and we want to be aware, be awake, hold our attention, be integrated, that we really should take everything into consideration of doing it for the goodness of the next, 7 generations ahead, and taking that into a component, like how, will this work withstand? Will this energy be good? Like, what are we moving forward? And so 3 years ago, one of my Native friends looked at me and she said, do you know how long a generation is, when Native people are talking about it? And I said, I never really grasped that, but I figured 7 generations, 100 years, maybe 500 years in the future. And she looked at me and she made the no sign with her head. And she said, no, 7 generations would be equivalent to 3,500 years in the future. So what are we doing right now, right? What, if we're on a path to hell or, whatever, however it's coming out now, like what's happening to babies in hospitals and whatever else, then that's really not going to lead anywhere into 3,500 years. That's like, extinction. So how do we now change things around thinking path. So how do we rapidly change that? And so there are really good things and existence and where things have flourished in, from now moving forward to 3,500 years in the future. So I was just kind of putting like a number on it, and I was just totally blown away. I was like, 3,500 years. I go, 500 years is a lot of responsibility to think about what I'm doing, and where I'm headed and my decisions. But I said 3,500 years, that's tough. That's some big, work.
Well, that kind of is the cycle of the Annunaki, which was 3,600 years. Very close. Very ironic that they chose that number because that's not a human generation. It's much shorter. 7 generations. But it's an.
Well, yeah, but you also realize that. Yeah, you also realize there are Native people that easily lived 500 years. And even, this is interesting, a friend of mine in Canada, one of his really good friends who's the last hereditary chief of a tribal nation up there, his father lived to be 200 years old. So there are, there are some, genetics that, have lived a long time. So they also base it also on their oral history as well. Kind of a thing too. And it is interesting how it's close to that 3,600 year mark. But anyway, go ahead, Janet.
Well, I was just wondering, have they made any attempt to document that? That would be something that would blow people's minds and get us into a different paradigm. Here's people that are living to be 200 years. Have they made any attempt to document that, to show that, to prove it? Because those type of things.
Right. I mean, you have the Aborigines who are, they have said that they are the oldest, humans on the planet, and they have it documented. They can trace their, heritage like way back. And what's even more significant is that like the Hopi too, the Hopi have oral history of the last 4 extinctions that their tribes survived. And
Well,
so,
I'm talking about the individual the individual life expectancy of. You said that they had a person that lived to be 200 years. Has anybody documented that or shown? Do they have their? I don't know what they would have, birth certificate or birth record, or
well, no,
has anybody shown
the
that
tribal
to
people
this?
know that stuff. They know. And they don't really care if, this is the thing is, most of white society wants to create their own storylines, but they're not going back far enough. They're not going back to how this whole system started, like a lot of the indigenous people. Um, their stories of, how it all started, what it was originally for, then what happened, and all the other things that came along after that point. So, and it's pretty a common thing between them. But it's interesting that nobody, and because Native people also are not wanting to desire to collaborate with other people on a lot of their stories and information, because people have done things to their tribes to make money off of their information and their stories, their sacred, medicines and their sacred knowledge. So a lot of them don't trust, mainstream to step up forward to talk about these things openly. And, point in case, one of the most white person documented traditional original healers was Black Elk. He was a very powerful healer. And the PhD guy, there's a lot of speculation around that, he made a lot of money off this information, these books, never, gave Black Elk or his family any money. And they, ended up feeling pretty used about the whole situation. So they didn't want, and also how the book was edited was not proper. There were things that were changed and edited out and things of that nature. So for, whatever reason, so we're not going to judge it. So a lot of indigenous people don't really want to put out a lot of this information out into the world. And now they actually even go legally one step further, where if there are people actually openly talking about some of it, there's a term called culturally inappropriate, and they can take legal action now for that. So because they don't want the information that they have to be lied about, changed, or edited, and they don't want people to profit from it. So if more of us step forward, people would be blown away at what you don't know about anything, and about their story.
Well, see, that's another way that money stifles us getting the truth. But so money-based thing, somebody's profiting on their information, their story, hurting their culture. And so money is the root. Money, remember what we were taught in Bible school? Money is the root of all evil. And if we can move past a money-based society, which we can't even begin to think of because we're so indoctrinated into this system, which is just self-enforcing, which funnels up to the top of the pyramid and the all-seeing eye and 1% and the Annunaki, Illuminati, and the good old boys club. Anybody who's got money, they're all part of it. You don't play ball, they don't let you have money. They will edit you. They'll bring it down on you if you're not playing ball with them. So everybody at the top is playing ball with the Illuminati. That's why they get to have money, and they are the rich, and the rest of us are the poor. And unless we get that, we are perpetuating the system by not waking up and going, nullity, I quit. I'm not playing this game. But I don't have the answer on how to do it. I'm just creating awareness. Becoming conscious. What did we call it when we were doing our little thing? What was it? Waking up conscious. What did you say?
Attention, awareness.
Attention, awareness, yeah. And so all we can do is discuss it. And hopefully enough people wake up and say, I quit. I'm going to go back up to, farmland and grow seeds and plant and build a community and look at each other and get our heads out of the phones and just look in some eyes, stop and breathe, share breath, share meals, look in each other's eye, grow food, like you said, put it in the soil, restore the soil, slow down and have a conversation. Wouldn't that be great?
I think it's time to stop being know-it-alls and to approach Native Americans and say we're ignorant about a lot of stuff, and you know shit we don't know, and we'd like to learn from you and honor other people, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, well, at some point you have to cross the aisle, right? You have to outstretch your hand across the aisle to the other side, and make those connections for sure. Yeah. No.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We have a Native American church. We were granted a chapter of the Occidental Native American Church.
The Tantra branch.
The Tantra branch for our work, and they have a Native American Tantra, so they want to help us to restore that as one of their rights, as one of their rights in their churches, because the powers that be have been attacking sacred sexuality, because of course it keeps us disconnected from each other and unconscious. So anything that's involved in consciousness, it ends up getting attacked, from
Your
shaming, from the shaming and ridiculing these practices to, like our church got attacked with zoning laws. So they try to zone you out of existence. They try to, they'll audit you. A lot of people in the UFO field, they get evidence stacked against them. Like there are a couple UFO people in the field that got child pornography put on their computers. They can do whatever they want. So that's what I'm saying. If you're playing ball, they'll let you accumulate wealth. And you may not be conscious what's going on, but you're playing ball if you're, in that 1% for sure. But the ultra uber rich, they're playing ball. Okay, I'm done talking.
Okay, so we have like 11 minutes left. It's gone by really fast. Is there anything that you want to add based on any of the things that we have conversed on that you guys might be thinking about in your mind going back through the show?
Yeah, sure. I would just like to tell. First, I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine named Ray, who he had his old dog downstairs. He and his wife were going to take the dog into a vet to be put to sleep because she was in pain and very old and so forth. And so Ray's asleep, and he hears his wife saying, "Ray, come down here." He comes down here, and what he says he saw was these orbs, these beautiful orbs, and he was filled with love. And and his wife said, "Hi, it's the Virgin Mary and angels." And the dog jumped up like a puppy and started wagging his tail. So we have three different beings that beheld the same situation.
Hey, that's Ray Hernandez, right?
Yeah. Oh, you know Ray.
I interviewed him like a while ago. He's pretty awesome.
But that shows you've got to respect everybody's way of seeing stuff. We're all on our own paths, putting things together our own way, and just respect everybody's way, and don't try to force other people into your box. We don't know what their path is. They don't know what our path is. We're all doing our best. That's what I think.
Yeah. And another thing, one big thing that I've learned over the last 10 years, I throw in there, is that, and one of the things that I teach my clients is that people have to go through their own stuff. If they come to you and you may be able to help them, but helping them does not mean stepping into their stuff and then you taking on their karma and them not learning anything. And so that's one thing that I've really, gotten over the last 10 years is that I need to be like an observer in your health, if that's what's going to happen. But me lending myself to you, emotionally, and then taking on some of your energy and clearing it for you is not good for you, and it's not good for me. And that I should, allow you your process 100% completely, in a good way, so that you can get through it and learn what you need to learn instead of taking that learning away from you.
Beautiful. My teacher, Hal and Sidra Stone, say the same thing. We never decide anything. We don't know what you should decide. What we want to do is to just help you know that you have choices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, Janet, you have anything last words as we're going out?
Yeah, we have a few minutes. Oh, where do I want to go with this? Yeah, in what we do with clients is they're not broken. They only be fixed or repaired. We tarry with them as they go on their journey and help them to what they really know, but they've forgotten. And we work with them to recover the lost pieces of their soul. A lot of people, they experience trauma, and they disassociate. And that's part of what the government does with their MK Ultra mind control, is they split people into subpersonalities, and they create the fracturing in the mind, and so that's what results from trauma, be it inflicted by our lovely secret government, or being inflicted by just living life and dealing with the stressors, is that we get fractured and shattered, and we disassociate, and we lose pieces of our mind. And so, and you can symbol it in many ways, but helping people to reintegrate, I think it ties in to what you were saying, that we're sick, we're ill at ease, and it starts manifesting in the body. I like what you were saying, how you can see somebody's leg is off, and I'd like to know more about that, because I'm experiencing a lot of pain in my neck, on the right side, and I was in a car accident. There's always the story, so if you listen to the story, that's one level of healing. So I was sitting in traffic heading to a conference, and like this Manchurian candidate type fellow, it was bumper to bumper traffic at the, what park is that over there in San Francisco? The Golden Gate Park. So we stopped for miles. This guy came up behind us. We were last in the line, and he slammed into the back of us, and he was going like 60 miles an hour. And it's like, didn't you see that there's a line of traffic? So I nearly got hurt, and I got whiplash, and it got worse and worse and worse over time, and nobody could seem to fix it. So here I am. That was in 2005. What is this, like 15 years later, and I still have side effects from that. And I'm thinking it is. So my body's crooked. So yeah, I wish you could work on me, Bridgette. But what would you recommend to someone who? So that's my story. I have a lot of people. My sister fell, and now her shoulders out. I have a lot of seniors.
Well, the thing is, you're always going to have
feel
right.
Yes.
So the thing is, like, you can go back and forth in between different sides of the hemisphere lateralization, to where one's working more than the other. So this is kind of an interesting story. So this was like about 10 years ago, and I got a call from a woman whose son, they were in a terrible accident, and he was in the passenger seat, and he got nailed pretty hard by the airbag. The airbags that first came out were pretty dangerous, kill people. And it was a head on. He took a pretty good impact to the head and face with the bag. And he went from being this beautiful, like really loving and opening, sweet and kind, smart boy, to being paranoid and very like reptilian, kind of psychotic, paranoid, on just kind of like multiple types of levels. And so she didn't know what to do with him anymore, because he got so hallucinatory, and so left brain lateralized, and just decided that he was going to be a Catholic, right? And so she was having to actually, at the peak of all this, from the brain being injured and lateralized, she literally was having to take him Monday through Friday to communion every day at the church. Otherwise, he would freak out, and he wouldn't go to school, and he just became like, just psychotic. And so when she called me, I said, well, the thing is however the impact of the head was, it turned off or damaged or harmed the right hemisphere. And now you have the left hemisphere that's running in a, post-traumatic stress state. And so the past, the future, there's no present moment, paranoia, mental illness, disease. This is where all disease comes from, is being lateralized in the left hemisphere, which is reptilian. It's about me, and those kinds of things, me getting obsessive compulsive behavior, paranoia, lots of different things, hallucinatory sometimes. So when I started working with them and working on him, eventually in about 6 months, we were getting the brain back to where it was. And he went back to being the boy that he was before. But if it would have been left untreated, he would have had a lot of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual damage. And he wouldn't have, and this is the key, he wouldn't have reached his human potential, because when our brain is functioning in human potential, it's an alpha, which means both hemispheres are working. But even if you try to listen to alpha stuff to bring you into alpha, if one side of the hemisphere is not working with the other one, because of whatever's transpired, then it's not going to help you. And so alpha is the human place.
Mm-hmm. Listen, can I?
Yeah, we have 2 minutes. Go ahead. 2 minutes.
Okay. Let's see. It's what Symington showed is that the more anatomically accurate you were in your visualization, the more you could let your mind help you heal. And I just wonder whether, when you worked with this person, whether you gave him imagery of the brain. Did you show him pictures of it?
No, I actually do
I'd like to know.
No, I do a manual maneuver to the spine and the base of the brain that actually turns the brain back on. Now, depending on how old and long the trauma is, it can take a while for you to permanently reset and hold. In the beginning, you have to do it several times a week in order to get the release that's necessary. So everything, starts working again. It's like a 10-minute that I do. It's super fast, actually. But he may not hold for a while because there may be enough tissue structural damage. So that has to be all of it kind of, the methods that I use fix all of it kind of simultaneously. But then they can go back into the lateralized state, because usually it only holds about 50 hours the first time. And then each time it holds longer and longer until you've corrected everything in all of the bodies. Back to a state.
I got a picture of it. So when you're touching, you're sending your energy, you're actually physically moving, the circulation is the electric.
No, it's a manual technique.